The valley existed where maps forgot to look, cradled between mountains that pierced the clouds like ancient guardians. Morning mist rolled through the pine forests, carrying the scent of wild herbs and the distant song of waterfalls. In this hidden place, the village of Thornhaven clung to tradition like moss to stone, and anything different was treated as dangerous. Fennix hatched on the coldest night of winter, when frost painted the world silver. His egg had been found abandoned in a cave, left behind by parents who knew something was wrong. The village elder, Dorian, wanted to destroy the egg immediately, but the healer's daughter, Sera, begged him to wait. She stayed by the egg through 3 days and nights, warming it with her own body heat. Singing soft melodies that her mother had taught her before illness took her away, when Fennix finally broke free from his shell. Gasps echoed through the gathered crowd. His scales shimmered like polished copper in the firelight, beautiful and strong. But his wings told a different story. They grew twisted from his back, bent at angles that defied flight, membranes torn and incomplete. His back legs dragged uselessly behind him. The bones formed incorrectly in the egg. Dorian pointed a gnarled finger at the hatchling. This creature is cursed. It brings shame to dragonkind and danger to our village. We must end its suffering now. Sera stepped between them, her crystalline horns catching the light. As a monster girl, she knew what it meant to be judged for appearance. Her people had been persecuted for generations, seen as lesser beings despite their intelligence and gentle nature. "He's just a baby," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "He deserves a chance to live." The crowd murmured disapproval. Dragons were meant to be mighty, powerful, perfect. This broken thing seemed like a mockery of their legends. But Sera's brother Tavish moved to stand beside his sister. He was a large man, scarred from years of working the quarry, and his presence carried weight. "My sister speaks wisdom," Tavish said. "We are better than those who abandon this child. Let her try to help him. If the dragon cannot survive, then nature will decide, not us." Dorian's face reddened with anger, but he could not argue against nature's judgment. He waved his hand dismissively. "Fine, but keep that creature away from the village proper. And when it dies, as it surely will, remember that I warned you." Sera gathered the tiny dragon into her arms, feeling his rapid heartbeat against her chest. He was so small, barely the size of a loaf of bread, and terribly cold. His dark eyes focused on her face with surprising intelligence, as if memorizing every feature. A small sound escaped his throat, not quite a cry, more like a question. "I will call you Fennix," she whispered, "because you rose from abandonment, like the legendary bird rises from ashes. And I promise you, little one, I will not give up on you." Her cottage sat at the edge of Thornhaven, backed against the forest where healing herbs grew in abundance. Sera had inherited her mother's knowledge of medicine and magic, the gentle arts of mending what was broken. She prepared a nest near the fireplace using her softest blankets, creating a warm hollow that would hold his heat. Fennix watched her every movement with keen attention. When she offered him warm milk mixed with honey, he drank eagerly, his small tongue lapping at the bowl. His front legs, though small, functioned properly, and he used them to pull himself closer to the fire, dragging his useless hindquarters behind him. Days turned into weeks, and Sera learned the rhythm of caring for a dragon. She discovered that Fennix loved to be read to, his head tilting as she spoke, as if understanding every word. His scales grew brighter with proper nutrition, shifting from copper to bronze to gold, depending on the light. The twisted wings remained unchanged, but they no longer seemed to cause him pain. Tavish helped build a small cart with wheels, padded with leather, that supported Fennix's back legs and allowed him to move more freely. The dragon took to it immediately, pushing himself around the cottage with growing confidence and speed. His personality emerged like sunlight through clouds, playful and curious, with a stubborn determination that reminded Sera of herself. But the village remained hostile. Children threw stones when Sera brought Fennix to the market. Adults turned their backs, whispering that she wasted her gifts on a creature that would never be whole. Dorian preached from the village square that keeping the broken dragon was against the natural order, that it brought bad fortune. One evening, Sera tended her garden. Fennix made a discovery. A small bird had fallen from its nest, injured and unable to fly. The dragon pulled himself over to it, and to Sera's amazement, pressed his nose gently against the bird's wing. A soft golden glow emanated from his scales, flowing into the injured creature. The bird chirped once, tested its wing, flew away into the twilight. Sera knelt beside Fennix, tears streaming down her face. "You have magic," she breathed. "Beautiful, healing magic." The dragon looked up at her and made a sound that could only be described as contentment. In that moment, Sera understood something profound. Fennix might never fly, but he was meant for something else entirely. Something perhaps even more important. The seasons turned like pages in an ancient book, and Fennix grew stronger with each passing day. By the time spring painted the valley in wildflowers, he had reached the size of a large dog, his golden scales gleaming like captured sunlight. His front legs had developed powerful muscles from supporting his weight, and he moved with surprising grace using the wheeled cart. Tavish had rebuilt 3 times to accommodate his growth. Sera spent her mornings gathering herbs in the forest, and Fennix always accompanied her, pulling himself up gentle slopes and navigating narrow paths with determination that amazed her. She talked to him constantly, sharing her thoughts and dreams, and he listened with an intensity that made her believe he understood every word. Sometimes, when she felt particularly lonely or afraid, he would rest his head in her lap and hum, a deep resonant sound that vibrated through her bones and chased away the darkness. The village's hostility had not lessened. If anything, it had grown worse as Fennix became larger. Dorian called emergency meetings, warning that a dragon, even a crippled one, posed a danger to their children. He demanded that Sera send Fennix away to the wild where he belonged. One afternoon, Sera returned from the forest with baskets full of healing plants. She found a crowd gathered outside her cottage. Dorian stood at the front, holding a hunting spear. Behind him, a dozen men carried nets and chains. "The beast has grown too large," Dorian announced. "We have tolerated your foolishness long enough, girl. Today, the dragon leaves one way or another." Tavish stepped out of the cottage, his massive frame blocking the doorway. "You will have to go through me first, old man," for the confrontation could escalate. A scream pierced the air. Everyone turned toward the village center, where smoke was beginning to rise. A young boy's voice carried on the wind, crying for help. Sera did not hesitate. She dropped her baskets and ran toward the screams, with Fennix rolling behind her at surprising speed. They arrived to find the blacksmith shop engulfed in flames. Little Timothy, only 6 years old, had been playing near the forge when coals spilled and ignited oil-soaked wood. The child was trapped inside, separated from the door by a wall of fire. The villagers stood frozen, horrified, but helpless. The heat was too intense for anyone to approach. Timothy's mother wailed, reaching toward the flames as if she could pull her son from them through sheer will. Fennix pushed forward, his golden eyes fixed on the burning building. Sera felt his intention through the connection they had developed, a bond deeper than words. "No," she whispered, grabbing his cart. "You cannot survive that heat." The dragon turned his head to look at her, and in his gaze, she saw complete understanding and unwavering resolve. He touched his nose to her hand, a gentle goodbye, then lurched forward with all his strength. Someone shouted, but Fennix was already moving. He abandoned his cart and dragged himself into the flames, his scales beginning to glow with an inner light. Sera watched in horror as he disappeared into the inferno, heard Timothy's frightened cry, then silence. The crowd held its collective breath. Moments felt like hours. The fire roared and crackled, consuming everything in its path. Then, through the smoke and heat, a figure emerged. Fennix pulled himself from the burning building, his front legs straining, his twisted wings spread as shields. Beneath him, protected by his body and wrapped in those malformed wings, Timothy lay unconscious but breathing. Fennix collapsed the moment they cleared the doorway. His scales blackened by soot, his breathing labored. The golden glow that usually emanated from him had dimmed to barely visible flickers. Sera rushed to his side, her hands already glowing with her healing magic. Pouring everything she had into keeping him alive, an old woman pushed through the crowd. Leaning heavily on a walking stick carved with strange symbols, Sera had seen her before, living alone in a cave at the mountain's base. The villagers called her Mira the Hermit and avoided her, saying she dabbled in forbidden magic. Mira knelt beside Fennix, her weathered hands joining Sera's. "I can help," she said simply, "but we must hurry." Together, they worked through the night. Mira spoke in an ancient language, calling upon powers that made the air shimmer and dance. Sera channeled her healing energy, feeling it amplified by the old woman's magic, flowing into Fennix's damaged body. The dragon's breathing slowly steadied, his scales beginning to regain their luster. As dawn broke, Fennix opened his eyes. The crowd that had maintained vigil through the night erupted in cheers. Timothy's mother pushed forward, tears streaming down her face, and knelt before the dragon. "You saved my son," she said, her voice breaking. "How can I ever repay you?" Garrick, a hunter who had always been among Dorian's most vocal supporters, stepped forward. He had watched the entire night, seen the magic and courage displayed. "I was wrong," he said loudly, addressing the crowd. "We all were. This dragon has more honor than any of us. He risked everything for a child who had never shown him kindness." Dorian tried to speak, to regain control of the narrative, but his voice was drowned out by the changing tide of opinion. One by one, villagers came forward to touch Fennix to offer apologies. To express gratitude, Mira pulled Sera aside as the celebrations continued. "The dragon has a gift," she said quietly, "but he cannot fully access it with his body as it is. There is an old magic, forgotten by most, that might help him, but the journey to find it will be dangerous." Sera looked at Fennix, surrounded by children who had once thrown stones, but now giggled as he gently nuzzled them. "Tell me," she said. "Tell me everything." The old woman smiled, revealing gaps in her teeth. "There is a place high in the mountains where the Oracle of Starlight dwells. She guards ancient knowledge about dragons, truths lost when the old world ended. If anyone can help Fennix reach his full potential, it is her." Tavish joined them, having overheard. "Then we prepare for a journey," he said firmly. "The three of us and Fennix. When do we leave?" "Tomorrow," Mira replied. "The path is long, and the mountains do not forgive hesitation." That night, Sera sat beside Fennix under the stars, her hand resting on his neck, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. Fennix turned his golden eyes to her and made a sound deep in his chest. Not quite a growl, more like a promise. She understood perfectly. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The mountain path twisted like a serpent's spine, climbing ever higher into realms where clouds became neighbors and the air grew thin and cold. Sera walked beside Fennix, who had refused his cart, insisting on dragging himself up the steep incline with stubborn determination. Tavish carried their supplies, while Mira led the way with surprising agility for her age. Her walking stick, finding purchase on stones that seemed too loose to trust. They had been climbing for 3 days, leaving the valley far behind. At night, they huddled around small fires, eating dried meat and hard bread, sharing stories that made the darkness less oppressive. Fennix would curl his body around Sera, his warmth better than any blanket, while she ran her fingers along his scales and hummed the lullabies her mother had taught her. On the 4th day, they reached a plateau where the world seemed to pause. Before them stood an ancient temple carved directly into the mountain face, its columns decorated with dragon figures that spiraled toward the heavens. Mira stopped at the threshold, her expression solemn. "I can guide you no further," she said. "The oracle will see only those who seek her directly. Tavish and I will wait here." Tavish embraced his sister, whispering encouragement, then knelt before Fennix. "Protect her," he said, looking into the dragon's eyes, "and let her protect you." Sera and Fennix entered the temple together. Inside, crystalline formations grew from every surface, glowing with inner light that made the space feel alive. The air hummed with ancient power, making Sera's horns tingle. They moved deeper, following a corridor that seemed to shift and change around them. until they emerged into a vast chamber open to the sky. In the center, floating above a pool of liquid starlight, hovered the oracle. She was neither young nor old, neither solid nor transparent, her form constantly shifting between states of being. Her eyes contained galaxies, and when she spoke, her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "The broken dragon and the gentle monster girl," the oracle said, and there was warmth in her tone. "I have watched your journey with great interest. Tell me, Fennix, what do you seek?" The dragon made a sound, and somehow everyone present understood him perfectly, as if his thoughts became words in their minds. "I seek to be whole, not for myself, but so I can better protect those I love." The oracle smiled. "And you, Sera? What do you seek?" "I seek only his happiness," Sera replied without hesitation. "If he can be healed, I would give anything to make it so." The oracle descended until she hovered just above the starlit pool. "Anything is a dangerous word, child, but your love is pure, and that is rare enough to be treasured. Fennix, you were born with twisted wings and broken legs because your magic is different. You are not meant to be a destroyer like most dragons. You are a healer, a protector, and your body reflects this unusual gift." She waved her hand, and images appeared in the starlight, showing dragons throughout history. Most dragons breathe fire and wage war, but once long ago, there existed guardian dragons who could heal the sick, protect the innocent, and bring life instead of death. You are the first to be born in 1,000 years. Your wings are twisted because they were never meant for flight. They were meant for something greater. The oracle gestured, and the starlight began to swirl around Fennix, lifting him gently into the air. "I can reshape your body, give you the wings and legs you think you want. You could fly and run like others of your kind. But in doing so, you would lose your healing gift. You would become ordinary. Or I can complete what nature began and transform you into what you truly are. The choice is yours." Sera's heart clenched. She wanted to tell him to choose healing, to stay unique and special, but she knew this decision had to be his alone. Fennix closed his eyes. Sera felt his thoughts through their bond. She saw his memories, felt his pain at being mocked and rejected, understood his deep longing to be normal. But she also felt something stronger, a purpose that burned bright as the sun. He thought of Timothy, pulled from the flames. He thought of the bird he had healed and the countless others he might help. He thought of Sera, who had never wanted him to be anything other than himself. "Complete me," Fennix said, his mental voice ringing clear. "Let me become what I was meant to be." The oracle nodded with approval. "So be it." The starlight intensified, becoming a cocoon around Fennix's body. Sera watched as his form began to change. His twisted wings unfurled, and instead of straightening into flight-capable appendages, they grew larger, stronger, becoming shields of crystalline beauty that could wrap around and protect. His back legs shifted, transforming into something between legs and a serpentine tail, allowing him to coil and stabilize, but also to move with liquid grace. His scales brightened from gold to radiant platinum, and along his spine, gems formed naturally, each one pulsing with healing energy. Horns grew from his head, curved and elegant, and his size increased until he was magnificent, powerful, and utterly unique when the transformation completed. Fennix lowered himself before Sera. Their eyes met. An understanding passed between them without words. He was still himself, still the dragon she had saved and who had saved her in return, but now he was complete. "You have chosen wisely," the oracle said. "Your wings will shield the vulnerable. Your coils will support the weak. Your gems will heal the broken. And your heart, already strong, will inspire others to choose compassion over cruelty. This is the path of the guardian dragon, and it is a noble one." She turned to Sera. "And you, daughter of healing, will bond with this dragon in a way not seen for millennia. Together, you will be stronger than either could be alone. Do you accept this bond?" "Yes," Sera said without hesitation, placing her hand over Fennix's heart. 1,000 times, yes." Light erupted from where they touched, and Sera felt their connection deepen, becoming unbreakable. She could feel his emotions as clearly as her own, sense his presence even at great distances, and when she called, he would always answer when they emerged from the temple. Tavish and Mira stared in wonder at the transformed dragon. Fennix had become something from legends, beautiful and terrible in his uniqueness. The journey down the mountain took half the time, as Fennix could move with incredible speed now, his serpentine lower body propelling him forward while Sera rode on his back, her hands resting on his shield-like wings. They returned to Thornhaven to find the village transformed as well. In their absence, word had spread of Fennix's heroism, and people had arrived from neighboring settlements to see the dragon who chose healing over power. Dorian, faced with overwhelming opposition to his hatred, had left the village in shame. A new village council waited to greet them, and at its head stood Timothy's mother. "We have voted," she announced. "Sera, we ask you to be our healer, with Fennix as our guardian. The valley needs you both." Sera looked at Fennix, who lowered his head in a gentle nod. "We accept," she said. "But the valley must change. No more hatred for those who are different. No more fear of what we do not understand. We build a place where everyone is welcome, where broken things are mended rather than discarded." Garrick stepped forward. "I will help build this new world," he said. "I will teach my children what I failed to learn until too late, that true strength lies in protecting the weak." In the months that followed, Thornhaven became a beacon of hope. Sera and Fennix healed the sick, protected the vulnerable, and taught others that being different was not a curse, but a gift. Monster girls who had hidden in the shadows came forward, finding acceptance. Other unusual creatures, rejected by their own kind, found refuge in the valley. On quiet evenings, Sera would sit beneath the stars with Fennix coiled around her, his great wings spread like a shelter, his heart beating in rhythm with hers. They had both been broken once, mocked and rejected, told they would never be whole. But together, they had found something better than wholeness. They had found purpose, love, and the courage to change the world. "I used to dream of being normal," Sera whispered one night, her fingers tracing the gems along his spine. "But now I understand that normal is just another word for unremarkable." Fennix hummed his agreement, the sound vibrating through the peaceful valley. In the distance, they could hear laughter, children playing without fear, a community learning to embrace difference rather than destroy it. They had been called broken, but in truth, they had been exactly what the world needed. And their story, whispered from village to village, inspired others to look at their own broken places and see not weakness, but the potential for extraordinary strength. The moon rose higher, bathing everything in silver light, and the guardian dragon and the healer rested together, complete at last, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove that love, patience, and acceptance could triumph over any darkness. Their story had no ending, because the best stories never do. They simply continue, one act of kindness at a time, building a better world for all who dare to be different.